Hey, my name is Michael Trance. I'm a DJ, producer, and sound designer out of Los Angeles, and by now, whether you listen to mainstream pop on the radio or electro house in the clubs, you've more than likely heard that very big, airy synth pumping type of sound. Now, the method used to create that type of effect is called sidechain compression, and typically was a hassle to set up, but not anymore. This is the new Vengeance Producer Suite Multiband Sidechain.
The new Vengeance Multiband Sidechain offers a very simple way to add smooth pumping sidechain effects to your sound with very little effort. What sets the multiband sidechain apart from conventional methods is that it offers two-band sidechaining. This means you can split your sound into two bands and process them independently with various settings and envelope curves. This flexibility allows you to keep the lower frequency area clean and unaffected, while only pumping the higher frequencies, or vice versa. Optionally, the multiband sidechain can run in single band mode. The creative possibilities are endless. Let's take a look at how two-band sidechaining works in the Vengeance Multiband Sidechain plugin. Here we have a synth bass line and some drums. As you can hear, the bass line has some sharp attacks that could potentially conflict with the kick drum of our beat. By simply adding the multiband sidechain, you can now hear that we get an instant pumping effect on our bass line. Notice we didn't have to do any routing of audio from an existing track to act as the trigger. The multiband sidechain, however, does have various trigger modes that we'll cover later in this video. Now, what if we didn't want the lower frequencies to be pumped? Or what if we wanted the lower frequencies to be pumped and just a tad bit on the higher frequencies so they can cut through the mix better? Well, that's where the two-band controls come in. If we want to pump the lower frequencies only, we'll keep the strength turned all the way up on the low envelope. To have the higher frequencies cut through more without as much of the pumping effect, let's roll off the strength of the high envelope. You even have two independent volume controls, one for the low band and one for the high band. To dial in detailed accuracy on where your sound gets split into the low and high band, you can simply adjust the split frequency knob. However, if you turn the split frequency knob all the way to minimum, this now puts the multiband sidechain in single band mode. The multiband sidechain is without a doubt the simplest to use for sidechain effects. This doesn't, however, limit the plugin because it does have 3 trigger modes for more experienced users. The selected trigger is what activates the sidechain effect. Host mode, the simplest of them all, requires no external trigger source whatsoever. The effect is automatically triggered on each beat or quarter at the tempo set in your sequencer. Host sync mode is the fastest way to add a standard sidechain effect to any track. Audio mode uses a real bass drum as a trigger, for instance in your song. In order to use audio mode, all you have to do is select VPS transmitter as an insert effect within your bass drum track. As you can see here, I have added an extra audio track that only contains a kick drum. I'll now add the VPS transmitter plugin to it. The VPS transmitter sends the bass drum signal into the multiband sidechain plugin. Within the multiband sidechain, make sure you select the audio trigger mode. You'll also need to select the VPS transmitter as the input source within the input trigger selector. MIDI mode is quite possibly the most fun and creative way to use the multiband sidechain. This mode uses MIDI notes from your sequencer as a trigger source. As you can see here, we have a track called MIDI trigger. Inserted in this MIDI track is the VPS MIDI bay. This will transmit all MIDI data from this track over to the multiband sidechain. Within the multiband sidechain, you need to select MIDI as the trigger mode, and within the input trigger selector, you'll need to choose the MIDI bay option. Now that you're all set up, in the piano roll edit screen of your MIDI track, you can input notes at various beats to trigger the sidechain. What's really great about the multiband sidechain is that it can even respond to note velocity and note length. This is perfect for adding gradual dynamics to big synth buildups, or to apply the pumping effect to only a few sections at a time within a lead. Here you can see we have a breakdown, and we're building up the synth part to bring the whole beat back in with a new bass line. I've taken the same lead sound on the break and placed it on a separate track after the buildup, and you're probably asking why. With just one instance of the MIDI bay, it can trigger an unlimited amount of multiband sidechain instances on various tracks. No other plugin offers this kind of intuitive flexibility and easy use. Let's take a listen to the end result using the MIDI trigger mode. As audio passes through the multiband sidechain, it is split into two bands using a crossover filter. The multiband sidechain has three different filter models to choose from. There's a digital filter, notch filter, and the steep filter. Now, of course, you could just slap an instance of the multiband sidechain on this dirty bass line and get an instant pumping effect. However, this is where the Vengeance team takes it a step beyond. The multiband sidechain allows you to draw and shape envelope curves to really create dynamic effects on your sound. Let's take a listen as we adjust the envelope to create an upward bending curve. Now let's change this and create a short downward shelving type curve on the front end. As you can hear, we now get short stab attacks on the front end with some pumping on the release. By adjusting the attack and release curves based on the scales and ranges at the top of the display, which are displayed in 16th, 8th, quarter, and half notes, we can even change the entire groove of the bass line. The release is probably the most important phase, as it most noticeably determines the character of the sidechain pumping effect. One great thing to point out is that you can have different envelope curves for the low and high bands. You can even copy custom curves you've made from one band to the other. All of these parameters can be automated as well within your host sequencer application. Sometimes, depending on the settings within the multiband sidechain, your sound may need to be brightened up a bit. The multiband sidechain has two independent EQ bands to handle those tasks. The outer rim controls the band frequency, while the inner knob controls the gain. You also have control over the cue point by using the width knob. As you can see here, by simply applying a bit of EQ to the top end and rolling off a bit of the low end, we can find a nice balance for our sound to mix well with the other elements of the song. By utilizing the awesome FFT display within the multiband sidechain, we have a nice view of the frequency spectrum and can make adjustments accordingly to the EQ and volume settings on a per band basis. One thing that really stands out within the multiband sidechain is its beautiful yet versatile display options and window assignments. Right-click on the display window to show the different scope settings, such as flowing scope, sync scope, flowing trigger, and sync trigger. You also have the option to display the FFT audio input and audio output. Below the display are 8 buttons. These buttons have been configured to quickly view various display settings. Whichever way suits your workflow best, the multiband sidechain has a way for you to view it. As always, the sound design team at Vengeance Sound has loaded up the multiband sidechain with plenty of presets for you to get instant results and experiment with. Let's take a quick listen to some of the presets on a simple, edgy synth line. Now let's turn on the multiband sidechain and choose the Benazzi Pump preset. Now let's add the multiband sidechain to the reverb auxiliary bus so we can pump our reverb effect as well. Now let's try some of the other presets. You'll notice presets are labeled as single for single band and multi for multiband. To make some under the hood changes to the multiband sidechain, click on the System button. In this section, you can make adjustments to most of the global functions of the multiband sidechain, including switching the MIDI hold mode on or off and making changes to the preset folder location. Whether you're new to electronic dance music or a seasoned producer, the Vengeance Producer Suite Multiband Sidechain offers unprecedented flexibility and control in a sidechain compressor plugin. From adding dynamic effects to your music or assisting with experimental sound design, the Multiband Sidechain is a must-have tool for your arsenal of plugin processors. The Vengeance Producer Suite Multiband Sidechain is available on both Mac and PC formats, with VST, VST3, audio units, and RTAS support for Pro Tools, with full 64-bit support. For more information, please visit vengeancesound.com.